Hello and welcome to Marketing Global Edition with me, Jasmine Montgomery.
And I'm Piers Guyler. So Jasmine, what's been buzzing your newsfeed this week that has a marketing angle?
Well, I don't know about you, but it seems to me like everyone is talking about Marks and Spencer coming back online this week. And I think it's made us realise something really interesting about brands.
Oh, I know. Listen, just for a bit of context, this is a story that Marks and Spencer's went offline for weeks after a serious cyber attack, which means it meant no online orders, no click and collect, even the returns were a real mess. And suddenly we all realised, we missed M&S.
There were think pieces, social media nostalgia, people panic buying Percy pigs. The Times ran a piece headlined, "Oh, how I've missed my Marks fix." There was some brilliant stuff on social. So there was a wonderful lady called Jodie Hannah. I don't know who she is, but she posted on LinkedIn. She said, "Is anyone else missing M&S online or is it just me? They're pretty much my go-to for everything," said Jodie. She said, "The boys' school shoes need replacing? M&S. We need some new hand towels in the office? M&S. I'm looking for some linen trousers? M&S. I need to send my stepmom a birthday gift in the post? M&S. She said she wanted to purchase all these things this week and had to source them from somewhere else, and she was very upset about that. And she had such a brilliant line. She said, "It's not just any cyber attack. This is an M&S cyber attack. Please point it out. Love from your loyal customer." And I absolutely loved that. And, you know, people's social media was just filled with people desperate, you know, for M&S. And actually, when the CEO, the managing director, finally did post that they were coming back online, his post on Instagram got 5 times the amount of engagement that you'd normally see for a post. So you can just see how much people were invested in this and cared.
Absolutely. Well, it's M&S, you know. So what it tells us is M&S isn't just a retailer. It's part of the cultural fabric. It's one of those brands that sits in the background of your life until it goes missing.
And it made us think, are there brands that are not out there making a lot of noise on social media, that people don't think of as particularly cool or important, they just don't think about them, but which we would miss terribly if they were gone? Are there brands that are almost hiding in plain sight? We think there are, and we've coined the term whispering titans to describe these brands.
Yes, this is all about those brands that underpin our lives quietly. They're not necessarily flashy or fashionable, but they are fundamental. And it's only when they disappear that we realise we miss them.
Right. So what defines a whispering titan? You know, it's such an interesting question. I think it's not just about size, although it is about the gap between their actual size, which is often huge, and their share of mind, which is often small, but underpinned by quite a massive share of heart.
Oh, that's a nice share of heart. Yeah, right. Okay. We don't talk about them. They don't trend on TikTok, but they're there when you need them. Always, right? Like a really good raincoat, for example, or a functioning heating system.
Yeah, or the place you always trust to buy your knickers. So, you know, they're often characterized by having huge market share, really consistent revenue. They're deeply integrated into daily life. But they have a low profile in pop culture. You know, they're not social media darlings or sort of lifestyle influencers. They're essential and reliable, but rarely described as cool.
Exactly. Quiet Titans are underrated constants. They earn trust over decades, not quarters. And they don't need hype because they have history.
So let's start close to home here in the UK. So besides M&S, who else qualifies as a whispering titan in the UK?
Oh, 100%. Boots the chemist. Just now known as Boots, really. Yeah. It's not cool. It's not controversial. But when the prescription system crashes, people notice.
Yes. Something I would say like sort of BBC Radio 4, kind of always on in the background of millions of kitchens. No one Instagrams it, but everyone listens to it.
Yeah, Sainsbury's, not as premium as Waitrose or as ruthless as Tesco, but quietly feeding the nation.
Yeah, something like the AA, the kind that tows your car, not the meetings. So you only think about them when your car dies on the A303, and then they're absolute heroes.
And then, of course, there is McVitie's. So McVitie's biscuits, especially the digestive, it's in every biscuit tin, but they're not even branded half the time. You don't even know what you're eating, I suppose, but it's just there. It's just there.
Yeah.
Actually, I think
So,
they are branded.
yeah, that's a great kind of romp through UK ones. And then, if we go international, I think it's interesting to look at, I think every country has its whispering titans, right?
Yeah, well, I would point out that M&S is international. It's now in 62 countries across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia.
Although, interestingly, not yet Africa. M&S, if you want some help breaking into Africa, give us a call.
Stop touting for new business. Montgomery.
Oh, come on, everyone knows that's really why we do it.
No, we did it to give a little bit of experience back and to have a bit of a fun.
Well, you may, but I do it to get new business. But okay, Mother Teresa, then tell us what international brands are whispering titans.
Well, in the US, I'd say Heinz is a classic. You don't tweet about your ketchup, but you do notice when it's not Heinz.
Or your children do, anyway. But yeah, something like Whirlpool powers half the world's fridges. No one celebrates them, no one talks about them, but no one wants to deal with life without them.
Yeah, in Singapore, Fair Price is a grocery chain that just is. You don't love it, you don't love it, you don't loathe it, but it is just your baseline. It is there for you.
Yeah. I can think of, from growing up in Asia, a lot of things actually like Bata shoes, which, nobody dreams of having Bata. Well, probably some kids do dream of having Bata shoes, but they're not super trend forward, but they're just kind of there. And I think they, if they go out of business globally, people in Asia would miss them so much. Or brands like Milo, sort of an Ovaltine type drink, or Maggie stock cubes.
Yeah. I mean, also, look, a lot of brands are made by the likes of Nestle, but not the corporate mega brand itself, Nestle. I'm talking about those localized products that it owns. So Nescafe, Gerber baby food, Cheerios.
Yeah.
On and on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Nestle, with things like Milo and Maggie and Nescafe and stuff, I don't know, I feel like Nestle as a kind of conglomerate actually seems to really, have this space. I suppose that's probably true of P&G and Unilever too, but there are a lot of these kind of, whispering titan brands in there. In Kenya, I think a brilliant example is Unga Group. So it's one of the country's oldest food companies, founded in 1908, and it makes flour, and it's not an exciting product, but it's the flour behind ugali, which is this staple food made from maize in Kenya, which is a bit like eating your sponge, really. It's eaten, or like your shoe leather. I mean, it's not great, but it's eaten in almost every home, every day. And for generations, unga has been both kind of the brand and the descriptive noun.
Right, so it's like Hoover or Kleenex. The brand name becomes the thing itself, sellotape. Unga literally means flour, right, in Swahili?
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. So again, no flashy marketing, no influencer strategy, just quiet domination. You don't realize how vital it is until there's a shortage.
I think a weird one I'd like to say is Toblerone. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not really the coolest chocolate, but it is unique. And if it suddenly disappeared off the market, I think people would really miss it, actually.
Yeah. What would you bring back from the airport for people, honestly?
I know. Anyway, let's talk about why quiet brands, quiet giants really matter.
Whispering titans, yes.
Yeah. So what does the M&S case tell us? That these brands are more emotionally important than their marketing suggests?
Absolutely. I think they're brands that have earned a place in people's lives. And when something breaks, like the M&S website, you don't just miss the product, you miss the ritual.
Right. So it's the opposite of disruption. It's continuity, really, isn't it? In a chaotic world, continuity is really valuable.
Yeah, and the lesson for marketeers maybe sort of don't mistake silence for weakness. Some brands don't shout because they don't need to.
All right, here's a question. Can you build a whispering titan, or do they have to evolve over decades?
I think it's hard but not impossible. So I think you need consistency, purpose, patience, and actual usefulness. So I think there are a number of things, building a whispering titan, a brand like Boots, M&S, it's not about virality, disruption, or trend chasing. It's more about sort of earning silent indispensability over time. So these brands don't dominate headlines, they dominate habits. And building one takes a very different mindset from building a cult brand or a hype machine, like we talked about last week. And I think, there's a number of, so here's how to do it, basically. So I think the first thing is you need to solve a need so fundamental that it becomes routine. And I think Whispering Titans often solve a daily unsexy problem better than anyone else. So Heinz, it's sort of the one that will actually make your kid eat his food. You know, Kleenex is a soft tissue when you've been blowing your nose 15 times a day with a cold or because your boyfriend dumped you. You know, Boots, what they've basically got it. Whatever you need for health, they just have it. So it's about making yourself habitual, not occasional.
Okay. A second one would be to build relentless trust through relentless consistency. You know, M&S food and fashion, it's never shocking or really, really different, but it's always good. It's just so reliable. It just always delivers. And Hoover didn't just sell vacuum cleaners. They became the verb for cleaning, right? So, you know, all this stuff takes unchanging quality over decades. It's that really enduring consistency. And actually, interesting, it's not about over innovation. It's about conservative innovation. You know, it's like that just in time. It's that, not just in time. It's like improving consistently and slowly, but never loudly. So continuous improvement is the word I was trying to get to there.
Yes.
Kaizen. And to really understand brand behavior, no gimmicks, no overclaiming, that sort of stuff. So consistency.
Definitely. I think it's also about, you know, familiarity over fame. So these brands don't reinvent themselves every 3 years. They're not constantly coming out with something new and startling. They evolve in small, kind of culturally aligned ways. Mm-hmm. If you think of like M&S, the way it upgrades its clothing lines, it sort of does it just enough to stay relevant without alienating loyal customers. So they're not terribly, terribly fashion forward. And yet they're sort of timeless classic. But they do evolve, but you almost just don't notice.
Yeah, and the design and tone and language has got to feel reassuring, familiar, and grown up, just not trendy, not trying, just there.
I think when they do that, they become the default. So I think Whispering Titans kind of end up owning the category in the consumer's mind. So we don't talk about tissues. Well, in America, they say, I need to get a Kleenex. You know, or we don't talk about vacuum the flat. We say Hoover it or whatever. And, you know, you just sort of, people just, when they're ill, they just will say go to Boots because they just own the category, and that takes decades of unbroken presence and unbroken promises. It takes kind of clear ownership of core products, and so I think sometimes also they're really good at, you know, association with kind of life moments. So things like babies, illnesses, tea times, sick days, back to school, nurturing, comforting, reassurance, nostalgia. Like I think quite often there are, you know, these brands do really well at those things. They're cups of steaming hot Ovaltine, they're tissues when you're sad. They're like, there's a sort of an emotional comfort component there.
Yeah, and I suppose it'll always be like people trying to disrupt and take chunks out of them, but they are the ones that are always there. And when they speak, they should speak quietly, but really mean something. So these brands, these quiet titans, they don't shout. They speak, and when they do, actually people really listen. And they'll often lean into gentle patriotism, emotional reassurance, or generational wisdom. So the sort of things you might hear in terms of messaging, we've always been here, you know us, we don't need to shout, we just show up. You know, that sort of language.
I think it's a really interesting point you made about gentle patriotism. I mean, I think, you know, when we had things like in the UK, when we have things like the coronation, like nobody did coronation food as well as M&S did. Like all of us who were throwing like coronation tea parties, we all went to M&S because you know, you just trusted them to have that Britishness and to do it perfectly. It was perfect pitch, you know, it wasn't obnoxious. It was like, oh yes, this is where you're going to get scones and, you know, things with lots of like lovely sort of Union Jack packaging, but it's never going to feel overtly, you know, nationalistic. They just hit the note right. But yeah, so I think the other thing is, you know, just about prioritizing longevity over hype. So I think these Whispering Titans, you know, they don't chase short-term fame. They focus on sustainable emotional real estate. So M&S took decades to become a wardrobe staple. You know, it were not an overnight thing. And, you know, Heinz doesn't pivot with a new flavor trend every 2 minutes. It's not, thank goodness, constantly reinventing ketchup to the sun-dried tomato version, or, you know, whatever is sort of the latest salted caramel, you know, Dubai chocolate flavored ketchup. Thank goodness. It's always there. It's always waiting for you to come back. And in what they invest in these brands really is kind of product reliability over, like, you know, NPD sort of hype and innovation, distribution dominance. and kind of it's polite innovation. It's like it's relevant innovation, not super risky innovation, which is I think really interesting in terms of their pipeline and how they manage their product innovation.
Maybe the key is don't chase going viral, chase value. That makes sense. Yeah. So embed yourself so deeply that people don't even notice until they need you, or until they don't have you. Sorry.
I have disconcertingly found myself agreeing with you throughout this entire podcast, which is, this has just been a very difficult experience for me, Ɡayla. And I think next time we're going to have to find something we can really get into a healthy debate about, because I think there's been far too much agreement in this one. However, M&S, we're so glad you're back. Not because you're trendy, but because you're there. You're dependable. You're the place we all buy our knickers from. You are a whispering titan, and we missed you.
Pants, actually, from my side. But anyway, so here's to the brands that don't make noise, but do make meaning. So until next time, yeah, I'm Piers Ɡayla.
And I'm Jasmine Montgomery, and this was Marketing Global Edition. Thank you very much for listening.
Bye-bye.